Well, my dad trained horses, and I know when I was 6 years old, I started going out on weekends and hanging out with him at the track, and you know, I loved it. So every weekend I would go hang out with my dad. I was a daddy's boy anyway, but I would hang out with him at the track, and he would have me packing water buckets and doing little things. And then, you know, within a few months, the summer vacation, I was there every day, and they started trying to teach me little things, and I just noticed how much people admired my dad. And you know, they would come to him for advice, other trainers, riders. Herbie helped me with this, and that's what we call my dad's Herbie. And I just, you know, as a kid, you know, you kind of idolize your dad in a way, and I just thought, man, that's what I want to be. I want everybody like me like that. And I stayed with it, and gosh, by the time I was 12, I already knew what I wanted to do that my whole life. At 17, when the school year ended as a junior, I thought, you know, I could be training horses this fall when I turn 18, but I can't because I've got to finish school. So I went to night school and took 2 classes during the summer to get credits, so I didn't have to go to school. I could go start training horses at 18. I stayed with my dad all that year through school, graduated with my class, but I was out at the track every day now. And I came in the barn, it was June, and there was a box and 2 buckets and tubs with a saddle and a bridle sitting in them. And I always had to be first one in the barn, so it was like 4:30, 4:45, and I turned the lights on, there's that stuff sitting there, and I go about my normal chores, getting the horses ready to go and get started. And Dad comes in, and I said, I didn't know we had anybody running today. And he goes, you don't? He goes, we don't. And I said, well, you got all these traps set up out here and for the horses to go to the races. And he said, you want to be a trainer? I got, Mr. Conway's going to give you these 2 horses to train, and I got you stalls at Ellis Park, so you're a trainer. And I didn't have a hotel, I didn't have an apartment, never lived anywhere away from home. And I said, well, what are you talking about? He goes, van's going to be here at 11, you need to get ready. And he sent me on my way. He made me learn horses' legs when I was 8, 9 years old. He would show me anything that he would see wrong with a horse. He'd bring me and let me feel the horse's legs. He'd show it to me and point it out. You know, this is a splint, this horse is getting some pressure in its ankle, this horse has got thickness in its tendon. You know, all the injuries that horses would get, he'd always bring me and show them to me and let me feel them. And he goes, you want to see these as soon as you can, not when they start limping around, because you've missed them. If you catch them early enough, you can correct them. And then all the old trainers that were around there with him, they knew I was soaking this up like a sponge. And all of them would take me all the time and show me things on horses and give me advice. But the biggest advice I got from my dad was take care of the horse first, because if you don't, nothing you do is going to work. And you know, you can't rush the horse. You can't run him because you want to run in a certain spot. You can only do what's going to work with that horse. And I've carried that with me my whole career. And I know it's hard for some people because they get carried away and they want to do things. And I've been very disciplined throughout my whole career. And that was the biggest lesson I took, was you got to take care of the horse first, because nothing else matters. Yeah, the first 6 or 7 years, I did very good with limited horses. And you know, the clients started getting a little bit more horses in the barn, new clients, and some of them were getting me a little bit better horses to train. And I think it was, you know, the late 80s going into the 90s when I started getting a few horses that, one of them I claimed or bought that was running in a 5-claimer. And he was my first stakes winner, a horse called Native Drummer. And when I got him, and I ran him the first time after he'd been just buried in his first 2 or 3 races. But I'd watched the horse train with the guy that had him, and you know, there were some changes I thought would work. I had no idea, but when I implemented what I wanted to do with the horse, and he instantly won, and then he went from this bottom level horse to winning the Forego Stakes, I knew at that point I probably could do this at a different level if just given the chance. And the more success you have in this business, the better things go. But that's when I started realizing I knew enough to really, I could do it better than I thought I could in the beginning. And my learning curve still goes on today. You know, there's so much technology and things, so I still learn a lot today. But I try to listen to everybody. The old hot walker that's 70 years old has got some story that he knows from the 50s that, or 60s that work. And so I listen to everybody. and try to soak it in to this day. It was 2016, and I'd owned Mercury for probably 8 or 9 years at that point. And being honest with you, I thought I couldn't do anything bigger in my career at the time. I thought I'd reached the pinnacle for me. I had this big, beautiful farm with 3 barns full of horses, and they all were good quality horses. We were winning races at a high rate, and a high percentage. Had big, good clients that were with us for a long time and felt that security as well. And when you own this place, it's yours. And life was really, really good. And sometimes, you just feel like at that time I thought I'd reached the absolute peak in my career, and I was just, every day was a dream and it was perfect. But that night in December, we had this crazy winter storm, summer storm. It was so warm, and then the cold air came in, and it was just a terrible night. And bad storm ran through, and get the phone call that the barn's on fire. And you don't know what they mean when they say the barn's on fire. You don't know what's happened. So I said, well, call 911. We already have. And he said, what do we do? I said, well, get the horses out of the barn. And there was a problem with 911. They didn't get the call. And by the time I got here, the first fire truck 20, 25 minutes later was coming in. And we were trying to get horses out of the barn when they got here. And half the barn was gone. We didn't know how many we got out because the fire was spreading so fast. So while this fire was raging, one of my employees that got out of bed, stark naked, no shoes, no socks, no clothes anywhere, and he was running that burning barn, grabbing horses, trying to get them out as the barn was coming down, basically. We didn't know how many horses we'd gotten out because it was such a chaotic deal, and it was the most horrific thing I'd ever been through, with the screaming, the yelling, and some of the horses, when we bring them out, their hair and manes were on fire, but the rain was raining so hard it would take that out. But it was just, I didn't think it could get any worse. And about 3:30 in the morning, I told all the guys to go home, get some clean, dry clothes, and meet me at first light. We'd go try to find the horses we had cut loose. When I got here, I was the first one back that morning when the sun came up. And it was much worse than watching the fire and what had happened, because you see the actual devastation in daylight and the bodies laying there. And there's not a person in the world should see what we saw that morning. And actually, I barred everybody on the farm from going even near it. I put a couple friends out, and I said, my wife, my daughter, none of the employees come any farther than this, because I didn't want them to see what I'd seen. And so then we had to, identify the horses. I had to make the phone calls to the owners. Your horse survived, your horse didn't survive. That was a hard thing to do. I was very surprised with the support I got from both sides of that conversation. Everybody was more worried about us and what they could do, no matter how bad their loss was. But the only good news that day was we found 13 horses that we had cut and loose. We thought we'd really only release 4 or 5. So it was that chaotic that we had gotten 13 safety, but we really thought there was only 4 or 5. But that was a bad deal. And I pretty much thought that was it for me. I really had told my dad I was done, because I thought my heart had been ripped out. And you get to that great spot in your life, and then it's gone. And my love for the horses was there since I was 6 years old. And I loved my horses still, but I just thought something's telling me it's over. This is my sign to quit. And I asked my dad about it, and he said, I can't tell you what to do, but he goes, you got 60 other horses you got to go take care of. He goes, so do what you got to do, go cry, go take care of horses, go cry, go hit the walls, go scream, whatever you got to do. He said, but go take care of those other horses. And that was the beginning of the healing process. And then this overwhelming kindness from all around the country. People started coming in with food and blankets and feed and hay from Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee. People didn't know me, just saw the story on the news. And that's when you realize how much love and good is in this world, because a lot of times on the news they don't want you to know. But the kindness, that brought us all out of that dark spot. Yeah, when the first horse came to the track after the fire, I started recovering. And I was back doing what I love to do, training horses. So we took a year or two to get really rolling again. Ken Ramsey sent a bunch of young horses in. I love training young horses. So that kind of inspired me again. I was able to help develop and see this stuff. And then Jerry Jam Gochin, my big client, he kept getting us some nice horses. And I think it was the first horse I ran after the fire, the first horse I ran. I think that's when everything clicked back for me, and I could bury that night deep down inside and look forward to what was coming down the road. And gosh, I never knew this was coming. Well, I tried to keep most of my children out of the horse business because it's a 7-day-a-week demanding business through hot weather, cold weather, no holidays. And I wanted to make sure that they got good educations. And I tell them all, so if you want this business, own a horse. You know, be the owner. Don't be the guy that has to go out and do all this hard work. So it's panned out with most of them. They all have great careers. They're good children. But my daughter, Lindsay, she's a horse fanatic. She's an animal fanatic. She's a big part of my operation. She helps run the barns. She keeps me organized with my paperwork and so forth. She works like 3 men. Her mother, Kay, does the same thing. She's been, you know, behind the scenes on a lot of this stuff, and she runs the barn and the help and keeps an eye on the horses while I'm up at the track taking care of my job up here watching them train. We got a real team event with the 3 of us. My son, he works for GE, and he builds the big jet engines up there at the plant in Lafayette, Indiana. And he had all the plans to be there with us and seats already. And about a week before the Derby, they had a big thing going on at the plant, and there was just no way that he was going to get out of there that day. It was one of the days he couldn't take a sick day or anything. And so he called me that morning, and he was devastated that he couldn't come. So, you know, it was kind of the only thing all day leading up to the Derby that was on a downside was we knew Hunter wasn't going to get to make it. And the rest of the day was such a whirlwind of things going on and, you know, enjoying the walk and all the stuff. And I remember going through the tunnel, I started having flashbacks of this movie that, you know, we have watched for years and years and years. And the movie's called Casey's Shadow. It's a older horse movie that's not a Disney fairy tale movie. It's a really great family movie. And it's about a family similar to ours that struggled, but stayed in the game, had their ups and downs, and out of nowhere, they get this horse that became, you know, a champion. And it tells the journey, that movie, of that family and getting to the big race, and they actually win the race. And in the movie, after the win was there, the oldest son looked over at his father and he hollered out at him. He says, "Was it worth it to you, Daddy?" And we watched that movie sometimes twice a year. More of an inspirational thing for us long before the Derby. For years and years and years before the Derby came. That was our pickup for a family to keep us motivated if we ran on hard times or we just had a streak where we wasn't doing as well, especially after the fire, stuff like that. That gave us strength and motivation, and it was just one of those things the kids and I really relate to. And as I was going through the tunnel, being pulled everywhere and dragged everywhere, I had a flashback of them pulling the guy in the movie all over the place, and it was just, you know, hysteria, and it was crazy for them, and that's what it was going through me. So I'm finally making my way to the stage, and they do all the stuff, and when they're doing the interview, I'm looking out and I see all my family and friends are there except for my son Hunter. And I answered the questions that was asked. And as they were getting ready to go to Sonny, I hadn't had a chance to do what I had already planned to do when I got on the stage. And I told the guy, I said, I have one more thing left to say. And when he gave me back the microphone, I looked out into the crowd and I said, this is my son Hunter, who couldn't be here today. I said, was it worth it to you, Daddy? And I screamed it out loud. And he, I wanted him, I knew somewhere he would watch it and he would understand. And I wanted to make sure that he knew I hadn't forgotten about him on the day I knew he wanted to be there, especially after what had happened. He deserved that shout out and I was going to give it to him. So that's what that was all about. And so I've been asked by a lot of the people in California and Hollywood that are talking to us about the movie rights and books, and nobody seemed to understand what that meant. And it was just something that was a father-son deal that me and the kids have always followed through to keep us happy in bad times or sad times or just slow times. And it's a very inspirational movie for horse people. And one of the guys out there, when I told him the story, he said, how could you even think of something like that with everything that was going on? And to me, it's about family and friends. That whole day was about family and friends, because we never thought we'd end up on the platform with the trophies. So nothing changed for me after we won the Derby, except I wanted to make sure that, family and friends had a great time, and my son wasn't there to enjoy it with me. And now he gets to tell everybody my dad gave me a shout out on national TV, and believe me, that means a lot to him. Of course, my dad's story. He got me into this business, and he follows real close now, and I know he's happier than I've seen him in a long time. He actually likes to enjoy talking horses again. Well, the Rich Strike story starts in September when he was claimed to Churchill, and he came to Mercury, and that's where primarily all his training is done, is here at Mercury. Now, he's been at Churchill for a couple weeks before the Derby, a few weeks after the Derby, and at Belmont, but other than that part, he primarily trains exclusively at Mercury. He did go to Turfway a few times and breeze over the winter, but he didn't stay at Turfway. It just was up for the breeze and come home. And he's got so many people that have been involved in him getting there, a lot more than we just see on TV. I have Benito and Antonio here at the farm that have, all winter they groomed and took care of the horse, helped us out quite a bit. I have Jose that gallops him on a regular basis here, Juan Enriquez, who does a lot of the breezing here at Mercury. And then when he travels to Turfway, Jerry Dixon Jr. takes care of my horses at the races. He and Keith McNerney and another guy that helps us part-time up there. Those guys are there the days that he breezes and works out, and for the days that we ran him, they're there to take him over to the paddock and take care of business. Then when we went to Churchill for the Derby, we had to have a team on the property and stay with the horse 24/7. I'm so happy that Jerry Dixon and his senior and his son Jerry Dixon Jr. Accepted my invitation to please come help us with the horse, because both those guys are father and son team like me and my father. And Jerry and the horse kind of fell in love with each other at the Derby, and it was a great relationship between the two. And his father mentored him along the way and helped him not be nervous handling a horse that was getting ready for a big race like that, because Jerry Sr.'s been around this game as long as I have. Been around some really good horses and had another Derby horse here and there that he's been associated with, so he was able to calm his son and kind of help him through the process. That worked out real good for them. And then we had a guy we called Dollarville who came, and he would night watch and keep an eye during the day as well on Richie, because we have track security and all 24/7, but they don't really know much about the horse. And if the horse was to get sick or get cast against the wall, they wouldn't know what to do. But Dollar Bill did, and that's why he was there as well. So, then you got my van drivers, the people at Mercury that ship these horses all over the country. That's a guy named Pete and another guy named Cody. Both those guys work 7 days a week on the road. Big stable with a whole lot of people that are involved, that most of them are behind the scenes that have never been mentioned. So I really appreciate giving them a chance to, let people know that there's a whole lot of people involved in taking care of Richie, not just a couple. Travers is our next race on target, and it was quite a bit of time between the Belmont, and that's kind of the way we had set things up. No matter how the Belmont went, we were going to get our little break like everybody else did after the Derby, and we were going to take it during this part of the year and gear up for the Travers. And so he got a month of what we call light training, which means no workouts and no real hard gallops. And Richie tolerated it, but he did not like it. He's like a kid that really doesn't know what's best for him. We've all been there. Our parents try to teach us that what we want isn't always what we need. So he did what I wanted him to do, but he didn't like it. And then about 2 weeks ago, he got his first little workout, and his attitude came right back, and now he's a happy horse. He's out here going at speed. He's had 2 breezes, and he's going to have another one in the middle of next week. And then we got to decide when we go to Churchill if we're going to stay at Churchill until we head to New York, or come back here for a week and then go to Churchill and stay. So that plan's in motion right now, whether he'll stay at Churchill after the first work up there, or if he'll come back here for one more.